What's going on? My name is Zhou, and I really be in the studio for real, in real life, IRL, all them things.
Yeah, hello? Yeah, I can't talk right now. I'm in the studio.
Zhou, my boy, my dog. I'm actually really excited about this one. How you doing today?
I'm chilling.
Just chilling?
Fresh out the studio, actually.
Okay. So
Probably
from the studio to in the studio.
Right back in after this.
For sure. Okay. So I know a lot about you, but I can't wait for everybody else to learn about you. Let's start from the basics. Where are you from?
Originally East Coast. I usually claim New York and Florida because that's where I spent the most time growing up.
Okay. What parts of New York and Florida did you grow up in?
My whole family, the origins of my family are like immigrants from the South Bronx. And then I moved around. I was in Rockland for a bit, and then Newburgh for a bit, and then I think 13 is when I moved to Florida, and then South Florida. So,
what part of South Florida? Like what area?
I've lived everywhere between Palm Beach County and Miami, so Dade County.
Got you. Dade County. And Dade County is pretty infamous at this point. It's like kind of everywhere. It's on the internet.
South Florida's a different place. I mean, the Florida I know is different than the Florida somebody from Tallahassee knows or something like that. To me, Florida stops at like Orlando, and that's pushing it.
Damn.
Everything north of Orlando is like South Georgia.
Where does Jacksonville fall into that?
Jacksonville's up north.
Got you. So it's farther north. So, word. So how long have you been making music?
I feel like I've messed with music for years, but I started getting serious about trying to make music in 2018. I had a brief hiatus for 2 years where I didn't do music. And then just moved to LA and started hitting it hard.
Word. Okay. So, but when did you originally get into music? Like what age roughly?
I don't know. Maybe like high school I started messing with it, but just like very loose, like how most people start, crack version of Fruity Loops and, start making shitty beats.
Bet that. Okay. So you started as a producer then? Okay. So with production, did you get into engineering from there or being an artist? Like obviously I know you're an amazing singer, but at what point did you even how did that come into play?
Singing was the last thing I got into actually. I was producing and then I was around a lot of my homies in Florida that rap. And so I started rapping. And then I was like, well, if I'm making the beats and rapping the verses, let me see if I could sing hooks. So that's when I started trying to sing too. So that was kind of the last one.
Everybody randomly just found out you got a voice like an angel out of nowhere.
I feel like I don't know. I feel like that's something that's come with time too. I don't think anyone out the gate is just like just crazy. I think you just gain skills and get better at something. Just like, when my first Fruity Loops beat, I'm sure the first time I sang it was ass too, but you just keep going.
Bet that. Okay. So do you remember your first experience in the studio? Like even if it's just cooking up with the homies and then in a big studio?
So when you say experience in a studio, you mean outside of me just in my own space?
Yeah, give me the first time you were ever working with other people and then the first time you ever stepped into a studio that had some money invested into it.
I don't know if I can remember the first time I worked with somebody. Maybe just my homies. We would mess around and mess with songs or something, but there's no pivotal or standout moment where I'm like, yes, this is the first time I'm in the studio with other people. But if I can think about the first time I was in a bigger studio, maybe Vegas. Probably
so
Vegas.
2018, so it had been a while after you had kind of dibbled and dabbled.
Yeah, it hadn't really been a thing until I started really jumping into it.
Okay, and what was that experience like? Do you remember the smell? What was the gear like? It
was different. I think that the comfort that comes from, I'm definitely I like recording at home because I've gotten used to just recording at home. I got my own little booth built. I've gotten used to recording myself. It is a different process when someone else is recording you or you're in a foreign space. I think one of the biggest things that's interesting is getting not having to record yourself is interesting in and of itself. Everything's got its own pros and cons. I feel like I'm faster when I record myself, at least from people I've interacted with. I know there's some fast engineers out in LA, some people that could just speed through Pro Tools. I haven't encountered that yet personally, not because I don't think they exist, just because I just haven't crossed paths with them yet. But I can track myself way faster usually. But the upside to having somebody is you have a third party who can either be like, retake that, or more importantly, if you're trying to beat a take ad nauseum because you hate your voice, they'll stop you and be like, nah, that's it. Like, we already got it. You don't need to keep going. So it's cool to have somebody vocal produce you, because that's usually what I'm doing, either for other people or myself. So that's a cool thing. But I do think that my first time in the studio was one that's more so, I mean, it's kind of uncomfortable at first. You're like, it's a room, you know, you're in another room, people are watching you record. You're like, this is weird. I usually do this by myself in my own space. So I do think it's something you get used to, though, because now it's like, I feel like when you build up your confidence and your skills, now it's like you can put me in any studio and put on a beat and arm it, and I'll go in and just mumble take or freestyle or whatever. Like, I'm not scared to do that. I'm not uncomfortable doing that. But I think that just comes with time.
Bet that. Okay. And do you remember what studio it was, the first one? Because there are quite... I mean, I would think that this is new, because even in my time in Vegas, there wasn't like super popular, like kind of promoted studios as there is now.
It might have been 77.
That's a pretty popular one.
Yeah, I think it was 77.
I don't even think I've been over there yet. I think I've talked to some people from there, but I haven't been over there.
Yeah, if I remember correctly, I think that's the one. That was like my first time in a big like pro studio kind of thing.
Yeah, and what year was that?
Tracking. Huh?
What year was that?
2019 or 2020, probably 2020.
I think that's around the time that we kind of came cross paths too.
It probably was around that time.
That's crazy. I thought you had been in the studio for fucking years when I met you. That's crazy. That's okay. So Zhou's a quick learner. Got it. All right. Do you remember your worst studio experience? Like, what was you got some crazy studio stories of like anybody's baby mama running their car through the front door? Or...
Man, when I used to run my studio out in Vegas, I definitely had some interesting experiences. Because I was just getting my feet wet. There were definitely times where, you get street dudes coming through, and they're gonna bring street dude things. It just comes with it, and it don't bother me none from what I grew up around. But it's super interesting, some of the things that come in there. You'll have dudes bringing like
extended clips,
bringing their hose in. Yeah. The way that they'll turn and talk to them in the most disrespectful way.
And you don't mean hoes as in women, you mean hoes as in literal prostitutes.
Yeah. And so it would be really interesting. It was so interesting to me that they would like turn and talk to them in like the most disrespectful way. But then they would come to me and they'd be like, hey, what'd you think of my take? You think it was good? Like, looking for my validation when I'm like, yo, you just went at her so sideways. That's crazy to me. And then, just like dropping, like, I think one of the girls one time, like, dropped a whole bottle of Hennessy on the floor. And it's just like, it was a hard floor. So it just like cracked and
Hardy foul.
Yeah.
And alcohol's hard to get out of the floor of a studio too.
I mean, blessed that it didn't get on any of the equipment.
Or like a carpet or something. You would have
Yeah,
for sure. But do you have one that stands out above the rest?
So a lot of those things I'm remembering from one specific session. Like a lot of like the girl dropping the Hennessy bottle.
Was the pimping and the Hennessy drop in the same session?
Yeah, because it was the hoe that dropped the Hennessy. So that was a...
Oh, he was
she
hot.
caught it later. Yeah. And then actually from that same session, it was crazy. So the dude wound up still owing like half on it. And they're like, oh, we gonna get you the money, this, and this. And so of course, it's like, I'm gonna hold on to the song until I get the money. I'm not just gonna send the song out. And then one of the dudes wound up going to prison, and the girl actually called while he was in prison and like, hey, like blah, blah, blah. We're going to try to get you the money, get you the song, or so they could get the song and this, and this. Then they hit me again, like a year later. I had forgotten about it. He hit me again when he got out of prison, because it was two dudes rapping, and he was interested in getting this song because the other dude was dead now. And I was like, that's interesting. But then I think that dude disappeared. I don't know if he went back to prison or whatever it was.
That's a
like,
crazy development.
Yeah, it was so interesting. So that was probably the most memorable session. That was a standout session because a lot of things all coincided with this one.
That's wild.
Specific session.
From what could you say you learned from this experience with this particular group of people? Don't let hoes drop Hennessy bottles in the studio.
I mean, I don't know. I'm always about just keeping the vibe going. So it's just like I go very in my world, especially when I engineer and stuff like that. Since nothing got on my equipment, it was like no harm, no foul. But definitely, I mean, yeah.
Pay your bills on time.
pay your bills. Oh yeah, try to be smart about like don't give out free product in terms of like if somebody ain't got all the money, don't give them the record. Like that's easy. You know, that's an easy learn. Like right there, I'll be like, yeah, I'll get you guys the record whenever I get the rest of the bread. But
facts.
I think that's the takeaway from that one.
Facts, and don't be afraid to make sure you get your money.
Yeah.
All right. Do you guys have a favorite studio? Your home studio, you can say, but give us like an actual place that you enjoy working. I think I have an idea where one of them is, but
an actual place. I mean, I could say the studio I had in Vegas was a dope vibe. We made a lot of records there.
And where were you working out
of? We had a little spot. So I like ran the studio portion of this spot in the back of the Boulevard Mall in Las Vegas. We had backdoor access. It was low-key a blessing because I got brought on board to run like the studio section for what was called Junction Complex. We had a podcast studio, we had a dance studio.
Not to be confused with Junction Sound.
Not to be confused with Junction Sound. Related, but different. Same origin, same dude who like opened the initial one and whatever. But yeah, so I had my little studio, and I mean, I was just coming into it. Like I talk about getting thrown into the fire. I was barely mixing for myself, and I got thrown into, now I got to mix on other people's projects. So that put a lot of stress on me. But this coincided around the time when COVID started to happen. So we had just gotten in there. Then COVID hit. So the world shut down, right? But the cool thing about our spot, it was in a mall. It was an old TV station. We were in like the area we were in was an old TV station. We had backdoor access. So I was in that bitch every day, like just grinding. I sat in that room for hours by myself, just trying to get better. Cause I'm like, if I'm going to be mixing other people's stuff. So, yeah, I have a lot of, I guess, good memories in terms of like seat time in there. I mean, we cut a record in there that has like, it's an old back room, and we got a record that came out of there that's 500,000 plays on Spotify. It's like, that's kind of wild to think that came out of like such a ghetto little room, Make do with what you have. I had a really good, I had some really good sessions in there too. It's funny because it's like, it's so diametrically opposed, right? I told you this whole story about
pimps and hoes.
And then one of the best sessions I had in the same exact room was with a gospel group. And, and I don't know if you can get more yin and yang.
Yeah,
but I remember
juxtaposition.
It just be like that. And that was such a dope session because I had never really done that. But the record came out really dope. Really talented singers. And then the way I just mixed everything, it just sounded big. And I've always been proud of that record because I'm like, when I show it to people, and they see the room it came out of, they're like, how did you do that, Yeah,
I actually remember you working on that. And remember coming in, peeping in a little bit. That spot was sick as fuck. Super long room too. Do you have any, what's your current favorite studio to work out of?
Current favorite studio. I'm lucky because I get to work out of the school. Icon, since I went to Icon, so I can work out of there if I want to. Obviously, my favorite studio is my home studio. That's where I am 90% of the time. But the Icon's cool. I've been brought into sessions with there's like 1,000,001 studios between North Hollywood and Burbank and Studio City. They're just everywhere out here. Studio time in LA is the only thing cheaper than everywhere else in the world.
Fact, you can throw a rocket hit a studio.
Yeah, 100%. And what's cool is a lot of these studios are kitted. Like, you know, you go down this like really just dingy looking back alley and you pop into this lockout and it's like, oh, C800, CL1B, Neve, and you're like, oh, it's like that, you know. There's been some cool ones. Mix Room, I really like Mix Room. My homie is like the head engineer over there. It's cool being. The reason I like Mix Room or bigger studios is it's cool to sit in a room and like know some shit has gone down, like some history is in this room. Like I remember we were in it's room C in the Mix Room in Burbank, the original location. And room C has now been converted into like a quasi like Atmos room. It's a very small room. It's a very, very small room. In fact, it's smaller. It might be smaller or the same size as my room in Junction. So it's a small room. And as we're sitting in that room, I was talking to the engineer there. And he's like, yeah, blah, 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 this, and this. And we were talking about the room. And he's like, yeah, it didn't always used to be like this. It used to be just like more of like just a production suite or like a small room or whatever. He's like, actually, this is the room that Eminem slept in when they were recording the Slim Shady record, the first one, because they didn't have a budget for lodging. So they just had the budget for recording and stuff. So he literally had an air mattress that he blew up and he slept in there and they cut the whole record in that room. I was like, that's crazy.
That's super crazy.
But it's cool, you know, and it's just like the same thing you'll hear about like, all right, well, Beyonce or Kendrick or Tyler, the Creator, you know, it's like, it's cool to know that like you kind of in the same space where these people have been, you know.
Absolutely.
I've been in session in B when like Polo G and his crew are in, you know, Studio A. It's the proximity of things in LA is kind of cool.
One, a dope thing to kind of take from that is just whether you're an artist, producer, or whatever, just making it happen. Like being here, being in those spaces, like if you can only afford a session, book the fucking session. Like figure it out from there. Like you never know who you're talking to. Some of these people that you would least expect that have worked with these people that people idolize, right? And you not only never know who you're talking about, but like there's really history in like every inch of this city, and it's pretty insane. So I definitely think that to anybody watching, if you want to come to LA, if you're scared about coming to LA and jumping into some session someplace, you again, just do it. Sleep in your car, sleep on the floor, sleep in the studio, whatever you got to do. Make it work.
You and I have both slept in cars and floors.
Oh, trust me, I'll probably tell that story eventually at some point. But you know, we just build in from now because a lot of people they don't see the hard work that goes into
the sacrifice. It's a lot of sacrifice.
Well, and someone like you especially, because and I would love to hear you kind of touch on this real quick. But you are somebody who has a specific desire in music, who's doing pretty much everything but that desire to just make it happen for yourself, right? And like, what is that thing for you? And like, what would you recommend to somebody who's like, well, I want to be this and I won't do anything but this one thing, but maybe they have other skills that they could utilize to get themselves there?
I feel like for me personally, I've been blessed enough to accumulate skills over time that are still music related that I can get paid for, right? And the artist grind, because ultimately ultimately I love making music, but as a touring artist, that's like the main goal, right? And I feel like to fund that sometimes, or not even to fund that, sometimes it'll just get you in the room with people or get you with connections. Like producing for people now has gotten my name on radar. So then people be like, oh, you can sing too? And now I'm in rooms originally just off a record that I produced for somebody, and they're like, oh, you can sing. Now I'm getting brought on the top line, or now I'm getting brought on to write, or now I'm getting brought on they're buying songs I've already written so that they can, you know, like if it's EDM, I can, you know, they can produce around that.
Engineering especially.
Engineering, you can make a lot of money off engineering. And there's a difference between, you'll learn there's a big difference between engineering and mixing. You know, it's like, engineers out here in LA If you can fly in Pro Tools, you can make money, period. If you can track fast, you can make money. And then mixing is all about having a good ear. You just got to have a good ear and understand the tools to be able to accomplish whatever it is you're trying to do with the sound. Producers, you got to be, in my opinion, it depends on what kind of producer you are, but if you're like a producer that you cook up from scratch in a session, you got to work fast. You got to work fast to get a vibe going so that the writers and the singers and all that, you know, start catching something. So
prior planning
can be
helps with that.
Yeah, and that's another way to go about it too, is you can pre-do tracks or, you know, have starter ideas. I don't like to do starter ideas just because I'm stupid, but I know people who will go in with like 5 or 6 starter ideas to a session. You know, they'll get a reference or whatever. But even just knowing an idea, like if I went into a session with somebody, a virtual one. It was my first virtual session actually a couple of weeks ago, and I asked her like, what, you know, for references. You can always ask for references, because even if you're not making tracks beforehand, you can get a sonic idea or a sonic palette or things to keep in mind, you know. And she sent me that $1 Million Baby record, and I forget what the other record she sent, but it kind of had like this almost like alternative feel. And like, so then I started looking for commonalities throughout them. Like, I'm like, all right, both of these have like bouncy, like crunchy bass lines, you know? And so now I'll go into it with that. Then I'll think of the cadences, the drums, and all that. So you can kind of go in ahead. You can cook from scratch, but still have an idea of what direction you're going, you know?
Okay. Do you have any like crazy life-changing moments in the studio? Maybe you like unlocked something, like one day you went in and just like, I don't want to go. And then you started making stuff in a way you're like, oh, that was a level up. Or maybe you got information from somebody, or you just sat in on a dope session.
I honestly feel like that every time I sit down to make music when I say I don't want to make music. Facts. Something always comes out of it, whether it be the record itself, a technique, a new understanding. And I always sit back at the end and be like, damn, this, whether it be the understanding, the record, the technique, whatever, this would not exist had I not chose to sit my ass down and work on music. Because it's like, sometimes I'm gonna be honest with you, I'm a lazy artist. If I have to set up anything, if anything inconveniences me between me and my art, I'll find excuses to not do it. And that's something I've learned about myself, where I've had to streamline my workflow to where everything's already set up. I mean, to the point where I'll configure my space, where my booth is right up next to where my computer is, because having to unplug the Apollo, move stuff, I won't record vocals. I know I won't. But now all I have to do is tilt my computer and sit in the booth and record. Now I can track. Mic is always live. Now I can track. The fact that I don't have to set stuff up, but you have to know that about yourself. But I find every time I get in the studio that happens. There are definitely like specific ones I can think of. There's been times where I've gone and just, even on a confidence tip, where I've gone in and done favors for people where, you know, I just happened to be free that day and they wanted vocals. And I was like, whatever, I'll pull up to the studio. And then I made it like a game for myself, where since it didn't necessarily, I shouldn't say it didn't matter, but it's like I didn't get paid for it. It's not like anything like that. I'm like, I'm going to go in here and use this as an exercise for myself as well. And so I remember this one time where I just rolled up to the studio. They already kind of had a song, but they were looking for a hook, and they were looking for like ad lib, you know, just like vocalizations over it. And they started playing it, and they just played the first verse. And I told them to stop it. And I was like, all right, bet, let me just go in the studio, or let me go in the booth and just arm it. And they're like, you're just going to go? And I was like, yeah, I'm just going to go. And I used that as a test to, like, earlier how I was talking about like that idea of pushing yourself or being comfortable in rooms of just walking in and mumbling. I feel like that was one of those times where I picked up on that skill, because I chose to just pull up to this studio and see if I could do it, you know, go in with and just be like, can I just start freestyling a hook? And can I do it in front of people? And can I, you know, pull it off? And then once you pull it off, you're like, damn, okay, I can do that. And now you've got the confidence when you go into the next section. For example, one of the first big sessions that I got into out here. It wasn't even technically a real session. It was a party full of music people who, after the party, as typical music people do, we all went to the studio afterwards. And it was just a bunch of fire top liners, a bunch of fire vocalists. And, you know, somebody just put on a beat, they armed it. Everybody got one shot to freestyle, mumble over the beat. And that was a crazy experience because it was cool to see other people like me do the thing I do and do it at like a similar like caliber and level. It felt like home. You know, it felt very much like, oh, okay.
You belong type shit.
Yeah, like this is where I'm supposed to be. And that was a big thing too. And like I said, to see other people doing it, and then come in and do it, it just builds. Like the confidence builds. You're gonna gain something every time you sit down and do it, whether it be technique, confidence, the track itself, an idea. Like you're not gonna make like a banger every time you sit down. That's just not how it works. You tap in. Sometimes I will make utter trash. And then sometimes I'll come back and recycle that trash. Like I've literally done that where I was like, damn, I made this trash 8 bars. And then I heard something. I was like, yo, I'm going to resample these keys. I'm going to chop up the keys, make it sound like it's a sample, run it through vinyl, and then flip it into something completely different. That's also why I like in the studio, collaborating with people, always explore any idea that somebody brings up, no matter how off the wall it is, because it always just leads to the direction of the song. Even if it's like not it doesn't directly get used, there may be an inspiration from that idea that just totally spins the song in a different direction. It's like, always trust that. I'm very much like a go with the flow kind of person, especially in the studio.
Facts. So the lesson we can take from that, get in the fucking studio.
Get in the studio, 100%.
Get in and work, put the hours in.
Put your ass in the seat and make music.
Facts.
Don't talk about it, just do it.
Big facts, big facts. So we heard a little bit about you wanting to be a touring artist, obviously. Mm-hmm. What are some other goals you have for music?
I mean, I know it sounds like hippie and shit, but it's just like music has done so much for me. I want to create music that does that for other people, like plain and simple. Whether it's like helps you through something, makes you feel not alone in something, makes you feel connected to something, you know, on a similar vibe, whatever the vibe may be, a positive one, a sad one. Just make records that affect people. I feel like that's a big component of art, right? Like make somebody feel something, make a connection. Art is so interesting because it's like a little vessel, right? You can create, I don't care what the medium is, you create this thing, people are going to put their own meaning behind it. It's like a seashell, you know, like you put out this little seashell and the crab's going to jump in it and make it their home. Sometimes people see something in a record that you never intended. And that's kind of the point, you know, they're going to get their own interpretation out of it. And that's beautiful. I never correct anybody. I'm like, if somebody's like, oh, this record means this to me, I'm like, fuck yeah.
It was about cocaine. Sure as hell was, buddy.
But,
any financial goals or like, do you plan on signing as anything? Not taking any $1 million prep deals?
I don't know. When it comes to the business stuff, I'm gonna be honest, like a lot of it frustrates me, especially when I see like crappy deals for artists and stuff like that. I feel like if the right deal comes along, maybe, but I feel like we've seen too many instances of people just putting the work in and doing it themselves. I know that is a way harder route. The DIY route is it takes a lot. Like you're more than just an artist, you know, making music becomes like 10% of the equation. Then, you know, you're everything.
And it's a lot of people, I think, pretend like that's an easier route. They're like, I'll just do it. Like I can do it myself. It's like, look, you're signing up to essentially be your own record label.
Yeah.
And you got to think about how many jobs a record label has and how many people are working at that label. You got to essentially do all that shit for yourself. So that's just, people got to put that whole idea of like, you could be the next Russ. It's like, I don't think y'all realize how much work Russ had to do.
Yeah.
Like,
but if you're willing to put the work in, I feel like the reward on the other side is directly proportional. But you have to find those boundaries for yourself, right? You have to figure out if you're like, yo, I'm just trying to be an artist. I'm not trying to write. I'm not trying to do any of this stuff. I'll sign away my masters. If it gets me this, it's like, yo, if that's for you, I'm with it. You know, like go for it. And I think for me, maybe this is something that will change down the line, but like having ownership of the stuff I create is like important to me at this juncture. Maybe that'll change. Like, I mean, of course, sharing publishing and stuff like that, but it's like to control the masters, I feel like is very important. And I feel like a lot of deals nowadays, you're not getting the master.
Well, I think especially for someone like you or me, though, we also have the ability to rap, sing, produce, engineer, and all that kind of stuff. So it's different when you can create all your own stuff.
Yeah.
It's very different, like, as opposed to if you're an artist and you need a team to work with. Like, again, that might fit better in your situation. But when you can create everything yourself, it's kind of hard to justify giving a record label everything, because you can, from scratch, make your own music.
Yeah, 100%.
And that is, like, part of a label budget is, like, to create music, when it's like, I can fucking do this
exactly
at home.
I don't need a production budget. I don't need studio time. I don't need a producer. I don't need a songwriter. It's like, I can do this all myself. And I think that's I try not to become like too precious with my music, but I think it does become a little more when you're putting your whole foot into it. You know, your whole soul is going into it, as opposed to like, oh, all right, somebody already produced and wrote this song, I just got to go sing over it, you know.
Well, and that's not to say, too, like, knowing when to step back from that and letting somebody that's more qualified step in the position. But it is harder to let go. It's like, this is my baby. I did everything for this. So, like, letting somebody take control of this is like, it's not an easy decision to make. Sure.
And I think there's one of the big secrets to that, or workarounds for that, is to be comfortable jumping in different things. I think for me personally, the last couple months, half a year, has been me alternating roles in different projects. Sometimes sometimes I'm the producer. Sometimes I'm helping write. Sometimes I am the top liner, the singer. Sometimes I'm just mixing the record, and it's jumping in, like, even collabing with people. Sometimes I'll collab with other producers. If I'm like, yo, production's fire, I'm not going to try to steamroll my way into producing. I'm like, no, this is cool. Maybe I'll have suggestions. We can co-produce it or something like that. But I don't need to control everything. Thanks. You know, like, I think that's where you have to trust and let other people's artistry happen. Like, we were talking earlier off camera about the whole thing with mixing, and how sometimes I don't like mixing because it's like you'll have somebody who's taking your creativity out that you're putting in as a mixing engineer. People think mixing is like a very scientific thing, I think, sometimes, but it's not. It's artistic as well. You're
directing a song, essentially.
Exactly. You're controlling the sonics. Mm-hmm. And you give 3 different mixing engineers the same stems, they're going to give you 3 different mixes. That's just how it is, how they see it, how they interpret it, the vocal throws they throw, you know, the effects they put on, the ad-libs. It's like all going to be different. And so, yeah, I think that just trusting people and their art and respecting them for their taste, I think, is important in any collab, you know? I feel like I haven't had really bad studio experiences or collabs, but of the small that were just like, I probably wouldn't work with this person again, it's usually like there's a flow that gets stopped, you know? You got to keep that flow going, and a trust, and just, like I said, it's the ultimate thing of just like knowing it, like letting go of your ego, knowing you're not always going to have the best idea. Do right by the song. If you go into any session wanting to do right by the song, you're going to be fine. Well,
and that collaboration, and that's also understanding the situation too, right? Like, if you're an engineer that's getting booked just as an engineer, understand your place, know when to have opinions, know when to, you know, maybe hold back. Maybe the person's got their creative direction down and you're just there to hit record. I wouldn't necessarily take that session, but, you know, somebody does like to just hit record and then place things where they got to go and then hand it to the person, call it a day. You know, you got to just know your situation and what you want.
Yeah. I got a homie. He's a super talented writer, singer, you know, mixing engineer, all that. But his normal job most of the time is a tracking engineer for like Cardi and Offset and all. He doesn't say a word because he doesn't have time. He's too busy just tracking. Remember, we talked about the difference between tracking and all that. And it's like,
if you quick, then you working.
Yeah. But you have to, like you said, he's like, I can't just pop in and be like, you should try this harmony. He's like, that's not my role. You know, my role here. He absolutely is qualified to do it, but it's just like, that's not his role. You know?
Facts. Know the room. Know the room. Know your place. Bet. Okay. Any upcoming projects or music you want to tell anybody about?
lots of projects, lots of different projects, working with a lot of different people. Versatility is a blessing and a curse. I like making music. So there's a lot of cool records coming out. I've been around a lot of electronic producers. So that's always happening, like EDM top lines and stuff. My own stuff, there's a couple old records I want to get out that are more like, I got like a synthwave one and then like a more Joji style one. I kind of want to get those out because there's new sounds I want to explore. Definitely want to do like a trap soul direction for the next project. And then I also want to do like a darker, like mid-tempo kind of sound. Like I've figured out, I think the thing that I'm going to do is just the projects will be different. Kind of like what The Weeknd does, it's like every project's kind of got a different sonic, a different palette.
Artistic direction.
Yeah, different artistic. It's like seasons in Fortnite, I feel like. His team has it down, like where they just, and it's a continuation of a story, which is so interesting to me.
So somewhere between Gesaffelstein, Bryson Tiller, John B.
And John Bellion. There it is. And throw some Bruno and Anderson in there.
There you go.
Some Mac. And then, we good.
That's fucking hilarious. Bet that. Okay. Any shout outs you want to give?
There's just so many music people. Shout out everybody that's just out there doing their thing every day. It's a lonely road. It's a very lonely road to do art and explore art. So just stay on your grind, stay around people who are also on their grind to remind you that even though it feels lonely, you're not alone. And just keep pressing. Like, shout out to artists. Like, being an artist is not easy. Like, especially in today's times. Like, just financially, it's not easy. There's a lot of pressure. So if you making art, shout out to you. I don't care at what level it is. Like, just keep doing it. And then just shout out all my close homies that are doing it. Shout out you out here, you doing it.
Okay, Angel well on the track.
And then my family. Shout out my family. They've been dope in coming to terms with my life choices, going after music, but they're super chill about it now.
And you've had some crazy life choices, haven't you? You've had some very large jumps in career choices.
Yeah, I've had some very interesting life paths. With
Memorial Day just passing, thank you for your service, sir. I don't think I've ever actually had to say this on camera to anybody, but for everybody watching, Zhou is he's a former member of the U.S. military, and
different life,
very different
life,
but is definitely out here pushing for his goals and dreams. It's never too late to start. It's not too late to start something else. Like, you can literally completely change your life and do whatever it is you want to do. 100%. I just wanted to make that a point because a lot of people, I've heard people come out of the military and they were like, damn, I kind of want to do what you do. I want to try this music stuff, but I don't know, bro. It's like, take a chance on yourself, Like, it's for me, seeing somebody like you who's done, and you've done some things in the military, right? And it's dope for me to see someone like you who, one, I respect the military aspect of it because I know that's a hard road to take, but then also taking this hard of a choice and a chance on yourself is like, that's super dope, man. It's super, super dope to know you and to see and stuff.
Appreciate you. Yeah, I think you're right. I think it boils down to, like, what energy are you trying to put out into the world at the end of the day? Like, sit with yourself, learn yourself, figure out what it is that, it makes you happy. Like, it's the whole, I don't know if you and I have ever talked about this, but the Japanese concept of ikigai.
I think we've in passing.
It's like your life's purpose is the intersection of 4 points. It's something you love, something that helps people, something that you can get paid for, and something you're good at. Where those 4 things circle over each other, like, that's your life purpose. And I feel like for me, that's music. I've done a lot of different things in my life, and music is the only thing that kept being like a biting feeling of like, damn, I kind of want to do that. And music is the only thing, like, find something that you like, regardless of what the outcome's going to be. Music is that for me. Like, even if I knew, if somebody came from the future and was like, hey, I'm going to tell you right now, you're not going to be an internationally touring musician. I wouldn't stop making music because I can't. Like it's part of me. So find something that is so innately part of you and go after that. Because if you don't like it now, you're not gonna like it later. That's why you got so many people stuck in jobs they hate just for a check and stuff like that. And I get it. Like times is hard, but you can. If you put in that just a little extra work, you can get after your dreams. It's you the only one stopping you. Like if I don't make it happen, that's on me. That's on nobody else.
Absolutely. Well, and utilize your resources too. Like you utilize the resource that is the the U.S. military complex to be able to chase your dreams, right? Like
100%.
It is nothing is impossible. You just have to you have to sit down, decide what you want, and then go after it relentlessly.
And look for opportunities. Because you're going to find what you look for. If you look for problems, you're going to find problems. If you look for opportunities, you're going to find opportunities.
Big facts. Big facts.
Again, my name is Zhou. You can find me on IG and most social at Kingdom of Zhou, KINGDOMOFZHOU. And yeah, I really be in the studio for real, in real life.